Isaiah Freeman was 38 years old when he stepped off a 14-hour flight from Doha, exhausted, jet-lagged, and carrying an anniversary gift for his wife of 9 years. He'd spent 8 months overseas building bridges most people would never see, wiring home every paycheck, trusting Kendra to hold down the life they'd built together. Never once did he imagine what was waiting behind his own front door. He pulled into his driveway to find his belongings soaked and stacked on the curb like garbage, his study gutted, his locks changed, and standing in his living room, rearranging his furniture like she owned the place, was his mother-in-law. Kendra wouldn't meet his eyes. Odessa barely looked up, as if he were the intruder, as if 8 months of loyalty had earned him nothing but a cardboard box in the rain. What Isaiah didn't know yet was that a forged signature, a stolen refinance, and a year of carefully constructed lies were waiting to be uncovered. But standing in that driveway, keys that no longer worked in his hand, he made a decision. And nothing in that house would ever be the same. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The seat was narrow. Isaiah Freeman had been folded into it for 11 hours. He didn't mind. He had learned, a long time ago, how to be still. Outside the oval window, the sky above the Gulf had turned from black to a pale, washed-out gray. Somewhere below all that cloud was Qatar, shrinking behind him. Somewhere ahead was home. He scrolled. The text thread with Kendra went back 8 months, close to 400 messages. He had read them before, in pieces, late at night in his apartment in Doha, when the air conditioning hummed too loud and the silence got heavy. But tonight he read them straight through, from the top, the way he would read a structural report, looking for the load-bearing parts, looking for where things had started to bend. August 3rd, the day he landed in Doha. Kendra, miss you already, babe. The house feels too big. Isaiah, I'll fill it back up in 8 months. Promise. He remembered typing that standing outside the arrivals terminal, the heat hitting him like an open oven door. The early messages were good. They were warm. She sent him photos of the kitchen garden she'd planted along the back fence. Tomatoes, basil, a little rosemary bush she'd named Gerald. He sent her photos of the construction site, the steel skeleton of the new transport hub rising out of the desert floor. She asked questions. He answered them. They talked about the anniversary trip they were going to take when he got back. Somewhere coastal, somewhere slow. He zoomed in on a photo she had sent in September. The living room. His living room, the one he had spent 3 weekends designing the layout for, measuring twice, drawing on graph paper before a single piece of furniture was placed. The built-in shelving he had engineered himself, anchored into the studs with the same care he gave to load-bearing walls on job sites. The house was his best non-professional project, and he was not a man who said things like that lightly. He had bought that house with 12 years of careful saving, a modest inheritance from his late father, and a co-sign from Aunt Ruth that she had offered without being asked. He'd paid her back in full inside of 3 years. She had tried to refuse the last check. He had mailed it anyway, with a note that said, "I don't carry debts, Auntie, even the ones people say don't count." That was who he was. He kept records of everything: invoices, receipts, signed agreements, site photographs, correspondence. His colleagues sometimes laughed about it. His project manager in Doha had once leaned over his shoulder at a planning meeting and said, "Freeman, you document your grocery lists too?" Isaiah had smiled and said, "Only if they're project-related." But the habit ran deeper than the job. It was a worldview. Things happened. Memories shifted. People forgot, or decided to forget. Paper didn't. He remembered a conversation from the night before he left. Kendra had been folding laundry on the bed, stacking his shirts into the open suitcase. He had been at the desk going through bank documents, consolidating the auto payment schedule for the mortgage and utilities, so everything would run clean while he was gone. "I set up a second account," he said. "I'll push money into it every month. 12 transfers, $1,500 each. Covers the mortgage, the car note, and leaves you something extra." Kendra looked up. "You don't have to do all that. I have my commissions." "I know you do." He didn't look up from the spreadsheet. "This is just a backstop, in case a month is slow." She had come over then and pressed her chin to the top of his head, her arms loose around his shoulders. "You know you're the only person I've ever met who makes a spreadsheet feel like a love language." He had laughed. She had kissed his temple. It had felt like something solid. He kept scrolling. October was when the messages started getting shorter. November was when the video calls stopped. She had promised a call for their anniversary, November 14th, and then sent a text an hour before. "Slammed today, baby. Can we reschedule?" He had said, of course. They never rescheduled. "My parents are staying with us for a bit," she wrote in early November. No explanation. "Still here," she wrote 3 weeks later, about her parents. Then, in December, "Dad's been having some health stuff. Mom needs help. You know how it is." He had written back, "Of course. Take care of them. I'll be home before you know it." She had responded with a heart emoji. That was the last warm thing in the thread. The plane touched down with a low, rolling shudder. The cabin lights came up. Around him, people stirred and reached for overhead bins. Isaiah sat still for one more moment, phone in his hand, the thread still open on the screen. He closed it. Opened his luggage claim confirmation instead. Gate 7, Carousel 3, the same airport he had left from 8 months ago. He texted Kendra as the rideshare pulled onto the highway. "Isaiah, 20 minutes out. Can't wait to be home." He watched the 3 dots appear, then disappear. She never wrote back. The neighborhood looked the same. Same oak trees lining Caldwell Drive, their roots buckling the sidewalk in the same spots they always had. Same yellow house on the corner, with the broken gutter Isaiah had noticed 3 years ago and never stopped noticing. Same amber glow from the streetlights. But something sat wrong in his chest the moment the rideshare turned onto his block. A feeling without a name yet. Something structural. The way a building could look fine from the street and still be failing somewhere deep inside its frame. Then he saw the cars. An older dark blue sedan, a Buick, late 90s, one bumper slightly crumpled, sat in his spot in the driveway. Behind it, a mud-flecked pickup truck with a cracked taillight was parked nose first against the garage door he was supposed to be able to open. He didn't recognize either vehicle. The rideshare rolled to a stop at the curb. "This your address?" the driver asked. "Yeah," Isaiah said. "This is it." He stepped out and grabbed his 2 bags from the trunk. The driver pulled away. Isaiah stood on the sidewalk in front of his own house and didn't move for a moment. That was when he saw the boxes. They were stacked near the curb, maybe 12 feet from where he stood. 6 or 7 of them, some folded over at the top, some already sagging and split at the corners. They were soaked through. It had rained 2 days ago. He had checked the local forecast from Doha, habit, and the boxes had clearly been sitting outside since before that rain came. He walked over slowly. His own handwriting looked back at him from the sides of the boxes in thick black marker. Isaiah. Office. Isaiah. Clothes. Isaiah. Documents. Awards. He crouched down and opened the top box. His dress shirts were inside, folded but waterlogged, pressed together in a cold, heavy mass. He lifted one carefully. The fabric had that sour, damp smell of cloth that had been wet too long. He set it down. Opened the next box. Inside, a flattened frame. He turned it over. The glass was cracked down the middle, and behind it, warped and water-stained but still readable, was his civil engineering license, his name, the state seal. A document that had taken him 6 years of school, and 2 years of field testing to earn. Sitting in a soggy box on the curb in front of his own house, he stood up. He pulled out his keys, the same keys he had carried for 3 years, the house key with the small notch on the left edge that he had made himself so he could find it by feel in the dark, and walked to the front door. He pushed the key in. It stopped halfway. He tried again, pressed harder, tried to turn it. Nothing. The lock didn't catch, didn't click. It just refused him, the way a door refuses a stranger. He stood there for a second. Then he knocked. Footsteps inside. Unhurried. The door opened. Odessa Whitfield filled the frame. She was a tall woman, heavy through the shoulders, wearing a housecoat in a burgundy floral print. Her hair was freshly pressed. She looked at Isaiah the way someone looks at a package they weren't expecting. Mildly inconvenient. Not particularly interesting. "Oh," she said. "You're back. Not welcome home. Not even his name. Just, you're back." Isaiah kept his voice even. "Where's Kendra, Odessa?" She leaned against the door frame without widening the opening. Behind her, over her shoulder, Isaiah could see into the living room. The furniture was wrong. The sectional he and Kendra had picked out together. Deep gray, low profile, bought from a furniture store 40 minutes away on a Saturday when they had nothing else to do, and ended up laughing for an hour trying to decide between 2 shades of the same color, was gone. In its place sat a heavier, older-looking set, in dark brown. A round table he didn't recognize. A cabinet against the far wall that wasn't his. From somewhere down the hall, past where his home office used to be, a baby was crying. High and thin and persistent. His office, his drafting table, his bookshelves, his filing cabinet, with 11 years of project records sorted by year and job code. The baby kept crying. "She's inside," Odessa said. She said it the way someone says, obviously. A moment later, Kendra appeared behind her mother. She was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, arms folded tight across her chest. Her expression was flat, not angry, not guilty, not relieved to see him, just flat, composed in that deliberate way that meant she had already rehearsed whatever came next. Odessa stepped aside without a word and moved back into the house. Kendra stepped forward, onto the front porch. She pulled the door shut behind her. She looked at him. The yard light caught the side of her face. "We should talk," she said. Kendra didn't apologize. That was the first thing Isaiah noticed. "No, I'm sorry. No, I should have called." She just stood there on the porch in the yellow light with her arms crossed and waited, like he was the one who had some explaining to do. "Tell me what's happening," Isaiah said. His voice came out level, quiet. He had learned a long time ago, on job sites where mistakes cost lives, where one wrong number in a load calculation could bring down a structure, that the moment you lost your voice was the moment you lost the room. Kendra shifted her weight. "My parents needed somewhere to stay. Their lease ended, and they had a situation with the new place falling through. I made a decision. You made a decision. Don't do that." Her jaw tightened. "Don't repeat what I say like I said something crazy. I didn't have a lot of options." "You had a phone," Isaiah said. She looked away, down the driveway, toward the street. "I called you plenty of times. Not about this. You were in Doha, Isaiah." She said it like the word itself was an accusation. 12 time zones away. "You were never really here anyway. I had to handle things." Isaiah looked at her for a long moment. Never really here. He had been in Doha because they had agreed. Because the contract paid enough to clear the remaining balance on the second mortgage in one shot, and they had sat together at the kitchen table with a printed amortization schedule, and she had circled the number herself with a red pen. He had been in Doha because they had a plan. He said none of that. Instead, he nodded slowly and said, "Okay, walk me through it." The front door opened before Kendra could answer. Odessa stepped out onto the porch, carrying a mug of something hot, completely unbothered by the conversation she was interrupting. She looked Isaiah over the way she always had, like he was a piece of furniture that didn't quite match the room. "It's not that complicated," Odessa said. "Kendra got the house sorted. The refinance went through. Her name's first on the loan now, so things are stable." She took a sip from her mug. "I don't know what you're so tense about." Isaiah turned to look at her slowly. "The refinance," he said. "Mm-hmm." Odessa glanced at Kendra with a small, almost satisfied look, like she had just helpfully summarized a long story. "She got a better rate too, I think. It worked out." "When did that go through?" Isaiah asked. Odessa shrugged. "Months ago. Spring, maybe. You'd have to ask her." Kendra was very still. Isaiah looked at his wife. She was staring at a point somewhere past his shoulder, not meeting his eyes. "I'd like to see the documents," he said. "Isaiah, not tonight," he said calmly. "I know it's late. I just want to understand what happened." He paused. "That's fair, right?" Kendra's mouth pressed into a thin line. "I'll find them." "Okay." He nodded. "I appreciate that." He turned and walked back down the driveway toward his truck. His truck was the one thing parked where he had left it, on the street, half a block down, where he kept it when the driveway was being used for Kendra's car. He had driven it to the airport 8 months ago and left it there, parked legally along the curb under the big oak at the end of the block. He found it undisturbed. He unlocked it, got in, and sat for a moment in the quiet. The cab smelled faintly of motor oil, and the pine air freshener clipped to the vent that had long since gone dry. Familiar, small, his. He reached under the back seat and felt along the undercarriage until his fingers found the magnetic lockbox bolted to the frame, a habit from years of fieldwork, carrying project documents through active construction zones where anything could get lost or damaged. Inside the box, a small external hard drive. He pulled it out. It held copies of everything: the original deed, the purchase contract, every mortgage statement going back to closing day, the equity calculations he had run himself before he left for Doha, wire transfer confirmations from his overseas account to their joint account, 8 months of payments, everyone on time, everyone documented. He held the drive in his palm for a moment, then he set it carefully on the passenger seat and took out his phone. Tobias Reyes picked up on the second ring. It was late, but Tobias answered late calls the same way he answered all calls, like he had been expecting it. "Hey," Isaiah said. "You still keeping real estate hours?" "For you?" Tobias said. "What's going on?" Isaiah looked out through the windshield at the house, at the light in the living room window, at the silhouette of furniture that wasn't his. "I need you to pull every document with my name on it," he said. "Tonight. I think Kendra refinanced our house without me." A pause, short and sharp. "I'll start right now," Tobias said. "Where are you?" "Sitting outside my own house," Isaiah said quietly. "Can't get in." The motel was on Route 9, just past the highway interchange. A 2-story building with exterior corridors, a vending machine that hummed too loud, and a bed with a comforter the color of old mustard. Isaiah had stayed in worse. On construction sites in the early years, he had slept in trailers with no insulation and shared showers down a gravel path. This was fine. He set his bag down by the door and didn't unpack it. Instead, he cleared the small desk, then cleared the bed, and spread everything out across the comforter in careful rows. The hard drive sat in the center. Around it, printed mortgage statements, the original deed, his wire transfer records, the purchase contract from when he and Kendra first closed on the house 6 years ago. He had printed backups of most of it before leaving for Doha, an old habit, the same way he always kept paper copies of his load calculations even when everything was stored in the cloud. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at it all. 8 months ago, he had left this city with a plan, a clear one. Pay down the second mortgage, come home debt-light, Maybe start talking about the renovation they had sketched out on a napkin 2 years back. Knock out the wall between the kitchen and the dining room, put in real tile. He had been looking forward to the tile. He put that thought away. He photographed every document with his phone, organized them into a folder labeled Property, Reference, and then lay back on the bed fully dressed and stared at the ceiling until sleep took him. Tobias Reyes kept his office on the 4th floor of a narrow building downtown, sandwiched between a tax preparer and an insurance broker. The door had frosted glass and his name in plain black letters. No flourishes. That was Tobias all over. No flourishes. No wasted motion. He was already at his desk when Isaiah arrived at 8:15, a second cup of coffee waiting on the corner of the desk nearest the guest chair. "Sit," Tobias said, not looking up from his screen. Isaiah sat. He placed the hard drive and the folder of printed documents on the desk between them without a word. Tobias plugged in the drive, scanned the folder's index with practiced efficiency, and started pulling records on his own screen simultaneously. For a while, the only sounds were the low hum of the computer and the faint street noise from 4 floors below. Then Tobias leaned forward. "There it is," he said quietly. He turned the monitor so Isaiah could see. A county property record. A mortgage refinance application filed 8 months and 3 days ago, 11 days after Isaiah's flight to Doha. The new loan amount was listed clearly. Isaiah did the math without needing to. The original balance, minus what they had already paid down over 6 years, compared against the new loan figure. The gap was clean and brutal. $180,000, Tobias said. Pulled from the equity in a cash-out refinance. He tapped the screen. The rate's marginally better, just enough to make it look legitimate at a glance. Isaiah looked at the signature line at the bottom of the application image. His name, his signature, or something close enough that a bank processor moving fast wouldn't pause. "I didn't sign that," he said. "I know," Tobias said. He said it simply, without drama, which Isaiah appreciated. "I can see it's off. The loop on the F is wrong, and you don't connect the I to the S like that. I've seen your signature on 6 years of joint filings." He pulled up another document for comparison. Whoever did this was working from a copy. Probably your tax return. Good enough to pass initial review. Not good enough to hold up. He scrolled further down the refinance application to the notarization block. A small rectangular stamp. A name printed beneath it. "You know a notary named Delphine Arcon?" Tobias asked. Isaiah shook his head slowly. "Didn't think so." Tobias opened a second browser tab. "She's licensed. Filed about 40 documents in this county over the past 3 years. Mostly standard real estate stuff. Title transfers, refinances." He cross-referenced something in the county clerk's database, then stopped. "Mostly for clients referred through one brokerage." He said the brokerage name. It was the firm where Odessa Whitfield had worked for 11 years before she retired. Isaiah said nothing. He reached over and picked up his coffee cup, took a slow sip, and set it back down. "I want everything she's filed," he said. "Every document, going back as far as the county has records." "Already queued," Tobias said. He leaned back in his chair and looked at Isaiah steadily. "This is prosecutable. I want you to understand that. Forged signature on a mortgage application is bank fraud. It doesn't matter whose name is first on the title. I know. So here's what I need from you." Tobias folded his hands on the desk. "Go back to Kendra's family. Act normal. Don't let on. Don't confront anyone. Don't ask questions about the refinance, and do not let Odessa know you've been here." He paused. "Can you do that?" Isaiah looked at him. "Yes," he said. Isaiah had a nagging feeling he couldn't shake. It had started the night before, somewhere between the 3rd document review and the moment sleep finally pulled him under. A small thought, quiet but persistent. What else don't you know? He sat at the motel desk the next morning with his phone and a notepad. his coffee going cold beside him. He dialed the main number for his company's HR department, the one printed on every contract addendum he'd ever received. It rang twice. Meridian Infrastructure, HR Services, this is Pam. Pam, this is Isaiah Freeman, employee number 4471. I was on the Doha contract, just completed. A pause, keyboard clicking. Yes, Mr. Freeman. I have your file here. How can I help? I want to confirm my contract status, he said. And I want to verify the mailing address you have on file for me. She read it back to him. The house on Delwood Court. His house. That's right, he said. One more thing. Was any correspondence sent to that address in the last 8 months? Physical mail? More clicking. A longer pause this time. Yes, Pam said. We sent 2 letters. The first went out about 7 months ago. That was the formal notification of your contract renewal bonus. The second was a follow-up with the payment breakdown, sent about 2 months after that. Isaiah held the pen over the notepad and didn't write anything for a moment. A bonus, he said. Yes, sir. Attached to the Doha Phase 2 renewal. It was processed and mailed to your home address. Is there an issue with delivery? I never received them, he said carefully. I can send digital copies to your email on file. Please do that, he said. Today, if possible. Of course. He thanked her and ended the call. He sat very still. Kendra had never mentioned any letters, not once. Not in a text, not in the brief calls they'd had. She handled the mail, had always handled the mail, had insisted on it years ago so nothing piled up. He had never had a reason to question that. He wrote the words bonus letters, intercepted, on the notepad, and underlined it once. He waited an hour before he made the second call. He needed to be calm for this one, because the person he was calling would notice if he wasn't. Marcus Webb had been friends with both of them since before the wedding. A good man. The kind of friend who sent a birthday text every year without fail, and would tell you the truth if you asked the right way. Isaiah kept his voice easy, light. Marcus. Hey, just got back in town, trying to get caught up. Isaiah. Marcus sounded genuinely glad to hear from him. Man, it's been a minute. How was Doha? Good. Long. You know how it is. He let a beat pass. How's everybody been? I feel like I've been off the radar. A short pause. Not awkward, but present. I mean, people are good, Marcus said. Then, more carefully. I'll be honest with you, Isaiah. I heard some things these past few months. Like what? Marcus paused again. I heard you were hard to reach, that you kind of went dark on Kendra. Left her managing everything by herself. Isaiah kept his voice neutral. Who told you that? It came up at Diane's cookout back in August. Kendra was there. She said it had been rough, that she hadn't been able to get a hold of you for weeks. Said you were buried in the contract and basically unreachable. Isaiah thought about the texts he had sent. The Sunday calls, the voicemails when she hadn't picked up. He had a phone log that told a different story, but Marcus didn't know that. Did she say anything else? He asked. Just that she was handling a lot alone. People felt bad for her. Marcus hesitated. I figured there were 2 sides to it, but honestly, Isaiah, she made it sound like you'd basically checked out of the marriage. After the call ended, Isaiah set the phone face down on the desk. He thought about the family group chat, the one with Kendra, her parents, her sister, and him, where he had posted photos from Doha, sent updates, tried to stay connected. The chat that had gone quiet from their side about 3 months in, and that he had assumed was just the usual drift of a busy family. He opened the app and scrolled back. The group still existed, but his name was no longer in the member list. He had been removed. Quietly, without notice, the way you close a door in another room so no one hears it click. He looked at the notepad. The list was growing. Forged signature. Equity drained. Bonus letters intercepted. A story told to mutual friends. He abandoned her, he was unreachable, while she blocked him from the family thread and watched the mail. This wasn't a woman who had made bad decisions under pressure. This was a plan. He called Tobias. The money wasn't the only thing she took, Isaiah said. She's been building a version of me that people would believe, so that when I came home and made noise, I'd already look like the problem. Tobias was quiet for a moment. How long do you think she's been setting this up? Long enough. Isaiah looked at the notepad. I want to see how far they'll push this. The coffee shop Odessa chose was called Birchwood Cafe. It sat on a clean corner in a quiet part of town, the kind of place with chalkboard menus and little potted plants on every table. Neutral ground, she had called it in her text to Isaiah. Let's have a civil conversation about moving forward. Just the three of us. Isaiah had read the message twice, then set his phone down and looked at the ceiling of his motel room. Civil. He texted back, "Sure. When?" He arrived 2 minutes early and chose a seat facing the door. Kendra and Odessa came in together, Odessa walking slightly ahead the way she always did, like she was leading a procession. She wore a cream blazer and pearl earrings, put together, polished. She looked like a woman who had already won and was showing up to collect. Kendra followed a step behind. Dark jeans, a plain top, her hair pulled back. She didn't meet Isaiah's eyes when they sat down. A server came. They ordered. Odessa smiled at the server warmly, the way she always smiled at strangers. Then the server left, and the warmth left with him. Odessa folded her hands on the table and looked at Isaiah the way a person looks at a bill they're about to dispute. "Isaiah," she said, "I appreciate you coming. I know this has been a difficult situation for everyone." "It has," he said. "We want to handle this with dignity." She said the word dignity like it belonged to her personally. "Kendra and I have talked extensively, and we want to be fair to you. You've had a hard year. You were away a long time. These things put strain on a marriage." Isaiah nodded slowly. He kept his face soft, tired-looking. He'd practiced it in the motel mirror that morning. Not a performance, just a decision to let her see what she wanted to see. "We think the cleanest path forward," Odessa continued, "is a buyout. Your share of the home, handled privately. No courts, no mess." She paused for effect. "We're prepared to offer you $15,000. The number sat on the table between them like a bad joke. Isaiah looked down at his coffee cup. He let the silence stretch just long enough to seem like he was absorbing a blow. $15,000, he said quietly. "Given your absence over the past year, and the contributions Kendra has made while managing the home and the mortgage entirely on her own," Odessa said, with the tone of someone reading from a prepared document, "we feel that's more than fair." Isaiah glanced at Kendra. She was looking at the table. Her jaw was set, but she said nothing. She let her mother speak for her, same as she always had when something needed doing that she didn't want her hands on directly. "I don't know," Isaiah said. He rubbed the back of his neck. I'd have to think about it." Odessa's expression shifted. Just slightly. A small loosening around the eyes, a fraction more ease in her shoulders. She had expected pushback. She hadn't gotten it, and that pleased her. "Of course," she said, gentler now. "Take a week. We're not trying to rush you. We just want a clean resolution." "A week?" Isaiah repeated. "Okay, I can do that." Odessa smiled. It was the smile of a woman who believed she had just closed a deal. Kendra finally looked up. For a half-second, something moved across her face that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite relief. It was gone before Isaiah could name it. They finished their coffees. Odessa made small talk about the neighborhood, about the cafe's nice atmosphere. Isaiah nodded along and said little. They walked out to the parking lot together. Odessa said goodbye first, touching Isaiah's arm briefly, the performance of warmth, before getting into her sedan. Kendra paused by her car door. "Isaiah," she started. "I said I'd think about it," he said. "I'll let you know." She got in the car. Isaiah stood in the parking lot and watched them pull out. Then he got in his truck, closed the door, and called Tobias. "They offered me $15,000 for my equity in the house." There was a short pause on the line. 15, Tobias said flatly. "That's what she said." Odessa did all the talking. Kendra sat there. "Isaiah." Tobias's voice was measured, but there was a hard edge on. "You have somewhere between 180 and 200,000 in actual equity. Even after the fraudulent refinance, 15,000 is not an offer. It's a confession. I know. This, combined with the forged signature, the drained equity, the intercepted mail, this is a strong fraud case. This is someone trying to permanently remove you from your own asset for pennies. Write down everything she said, word for word, as much as you can remember." "Already doing it," Isaiah said. He drove. Aunt Ruth lived 40 minutes east of the city, in a small brick house on a street lined with old oak trees. She'd lived there for 30 years. She didn't move for anybody. Isaiah pulled into her driveway, cut the engine, and sat for a moment. He hadn't told her much over the phone, just that he needed to look at something old, something from the beginning. He got out and walked to the front door. Aunt Ruth's kitchen smelled like coffee and dish soap. It was a small room, clean, practical, nothing extra. A round wooden table sat in the center with 4 chairs around it, the kind of table where serious conversations happened because there was nowhere to hide. A stack of old manila folders sat on the counter near the refrigerator, held together by a thick rubber band that had gone orange with age. Ruth set 2 mugs down and lowered herself into the chair across from Isaiah. She was 73 years old and built like someone who had never once been pushed around. Her hair was silver and cut short. Her reading glasses hung from a beaded chain around her neck. She didn't fuss. She didn't decorate her silences with noise. She just looked at her nephew and waited. Isaiah told her everything. He started from the beginning, the shortened calls, the missed video chats, the boxes in the rain. He walked her through Odessa's rearranged furniture, the new locks, the forged signature, the $180,000 pulled from his equity. He told her about the intercepted bonus letters, about Kendra quietly removing him from the family group chat, about the story she had been telling people while he was overseas. He told her about the coffee shop, and about Odessa's pearl earrings, and about the $15,000 offer delivered like a favor. Ruth didn't interrupt. She sat still, both hands wrapped around her mug. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she put her mug down slowly and said, "That woman has always thought she was smarter than she is." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a fact, stated plainly, the way Ruth said most things. "I need to know about the original property," Isaiah said. "When you co-signed with me, years back, before I bought the current house, do you still have any of that paperwork?" Ruth looked at him for a moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not surprise, exactly. More like recognition. She stood up without a word and went to the counter. She pulled the rubber-banded stack of manila folders down and carried them back to the table. She put on her reading glasses and worked through them with the quiet efficiency of someone who knew where everything was, even in a pile that looked like it had been sitting there for 15 years. She found the folder third from the bottom. She opened it and slid a document across the table to Isaiah. "I never released it," she said. Isaiah looked down at the paper. He read it once, then again more carefully. It was a lien, a legal claim, Ruth's retained financial interest in the original property he had leveraged to purchase the current house. During the transition between the 2 properties, the paperwork closing out Ruth's interest had never been properly completed. The lien had never been formally discharged. It had just sat there, quietly attached, like a nail buried in drywall that nobody noticed, until someone tried to tear the wall down. "Did you know it was still active?" Isaiah asked. "I knew," Ruth said. I figured you knew too. You always kept good records. I thought it was handled during the title transfer. It wasn't. She tapped the page. My name is still on it. Legally, I still have an interest in that property. Any attempt to transfer title, void your ownership, or finalize a sale without clearing this first. She left the sentence where it was, because she didn't need to finish it. Isaiah pulled out his phone and called Tobias. He put it on speaker and laid the document flat on the table. Tobias listened. Isaiah heard typing on the other end of the call. Read me the recording date, Tobias said. Isaiah read it. More typing. It's still on record, Tobias said. It was never discharged. Isaiah, this is a valid lien. Any title action on that property has to clear this first. Kendra's family can't transfer, sell, or finalize ownership without going through Ruth and through you. A short pause. They don't know this exists? No, Isaiah said. They don't. There's something else, Tobias said. The notary who processed the refinance, I ran her name through the state registry this morning. She's currently under a separate investigation by the state licensing board. 3 other fraudulent filings tied to her stamp in the past 2 years. She didn't just do this for your wife. This was a pattern. And Odessa's connection to her is documented through county filing records. Ruth folded her hands on the table and looked out the kitchen window. So Odessa's name is already close to something that's already burning, Isaiah said. She just doesn't know it yet, Tobias said. Isaiah looked at Ruth's document, then at the folder, then at his own reflection in the dark surface of his phone screen. I want to end this in one meeting, he said. I don't want a back and forth. I want to put everything on the table at once, in front of all of them. Then we need 2 more days to pull the final filings, Tobias said. After that, you'll have everything. 2 days, Isaiah said. That works. He thanked Tobias and ended the call. He looked at Ruth. Can I take this with me? That's why I kept it, she said. Isaiah drove back toward the city as the sun dropped behind the tree line. He merged onto the highway, one hand on the wheel, and picked up his phone. He called Kendra. She answered on the 3rd ring. Isaiah. Hey, he said. His voice was even, tired sounding. I've been thinking about your mother's offer. A small pause. Okay. I think we should all sit down together. At the house. Go over everything. Make sure we're all on the same page before I sign anything. He kept his voice soft, almost reluctant, like a man who had thought it over and was getting ready to give in. Can we do that? Day after tomorrow? Another pause. He could hear her thinking. I'll ask my mom, Kendra said. Great, Isaiah said. I just want to get it settled. He ended the call and set the phone on the passenger seat. Outside, the highway stretched out ahead of him, long and straight and dark. The house looked the same from the outside. Same tan brick. Same black shutters. Same oak tree in the front yard that Isaiah had planted from a sapling 6 years ago, back when the ground was still soft from the first week of spring. It was taller now, fuller. It had grown while he was gone, indifferent to everything that had happened inside the walls behind it. He pulled up to the curb and sat for a moment. Tobias parked behind him. They walked up the driveway together, Isaiah carrying a plain manila folder. Not thick, not dramatic, just a folder, the way he'd carry any set of project documents to any job site review. Tobias had a second folder and a small recorder, the kind used for depositions, compact, no bigger than a deck of cards. Isaiah rang his own doorbell. Kendra opened the door. She was dressed sharply, hair done, like she'd prepared for something. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes moved immediately to the folder, then to Tobias. You brought your attorney, she said. I brought a friend, Isaiah said. She stepped back and let them in. The living room still had Odessa's furniture in it. A wide sectional sofa in cream fabric that didn't belong. A squat decorative cabinet against the wall where Isaiah's bookshelf used to stand. It all felt borrowed, temporary, like a stage set built by someone who didn't know the original layout. Odessa was already seated. Perry sat beside her, upright, hands folded in his lap. He didn't make eye contact when Isaiah walked in. Odessa, by contrast, looked straight at Isaiah the way she always did, like she was doing him a favor by being in the same room. Isaiah. She said his name, the way you'd say the word inconvenient. I'm glad you came to your senses. Sit down, everyone, Isaiah said. He said it quietly, but something in his voice settled the room. He sat across from them. Tobias took the chair to his right. Kendra sat beside her mother, arms folded, watching. Isaiah opened the folder. I'm not here to accept the offer, he said. Odessa's expression didn't change right away. She tilted her head slightly, like she'd misheard him. He placed the first document on the coffee table and turned it so they could read it. This is the refinance application filed 8 months ago. My signature is on it. He let them look at it. I was in Doha when it was filed. I never signed this document. Odessa opened her mouth. The notary who stamped it, Isaiah continued, is currently under investigation by the State Licensing Board. 3 other fraudulent filings attached to her name in the last 2 years. Her license is flagged. He set a second document on top of the first. Her name and Odessa's are cross-referenced in county filing records. That connection is documented. The room was very quiet. He set down a third sheet, printed emails from his HR department. 2 letters were mailed to this address from my employer. A contract renewal. A bonus. I never received them. Never heard about them. He looked at Kendra when he said the next part. Someone was managing what came through that door. Kendra's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. There's also the matter of what you were telling people while I was gone. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That I abandoned my family. That I was unreachable. I have records of every call I made to this house. Texts. Emails. And I have the name of the mutual friend who told me, unprompted, what story was being passed around. Odessa finally spoke. This is harassment. You're coming into this home and this is my home, Isaiah said. Simply, clearly. He placed the last document on the table. This is a lien, filed and recorded years ago, when my Aunt Ruth co-signed my original property. That lien was never discharged. Her legal interest transferred through to this property and is still active on record today. Any title action, any sale, any transfer, any finalization of ownership without clearing her interest first is legally invalid. He folded his hands. She hasn't released it, which means nothing Kendra's name on a fraudulent refinance can do will push me out of this property. Odessa pushed back from the table slightly. That is nonsense. You can't just… Odessa. The voice was Perry's. It was quiet, rough at the edges, like a man who had been holding something in his chest for a long time and finally set it down. Everyone turned to look at him. He was staring at the table. His hands were still folded, but his knuckles had gone pale. I knew, he said, about the signature. I didn't know all of it, but I knew it wasn't right. He exhaled slowly. I didn't say anything because… He stopped, started again, because I knew what would happen if I did. He didn't look at Odessa. He didn't have to. The silence that followed was total. Odessa's face went rigid. Whatever authority she had walked in with, whatever careful structure she had built over the last 8 months, had just been dismantled by the one person in the room she'd assumed would stay quiet. Isaiah looked at Kendra. She had nothing. No angle. No counter. The color had drained from her face, and she sat very still, like someone waiting for an impact she could no longer avoid. I'll be filing legal action within the week, Isaiah said. He looked around the room, steady, unhurried. I'm asking you all to vacate the property. The paperwork started the next morning. Tobias had the filings ready before 9. Isaiah met him at the law office with coffee and his hard drive, and they sat side by side at the conference table, going through every document one more time before anything was submitted. That was how Isaiah worked. He checked twice. He verified. He didn't move until he was certain. "Once this goes in," Tobias said, sliding the first form across the table, "it moves fast. The fraud referral especially." "Good," Isaiah said. He signed where Tobias pointed. The core of it was straightforward, legally speaking. Tobias filed a motion to void the fraudulent refinance on the grounds of a forged signature. Aunt Ruth's lien, still sitting quietly on record, forgotten by everyone except the county filing system, was attached as supporting documentation. It gave Isaiah standing that the refinance could not erase. The fraudulent document hadn't just stolen equity. It had tried to rewrite ownership of a property that was never fully Kendra's to claim. The lien made that plain in black and white. The title company got the filing by noon. By mid-afternoon, Tobias had confirmation that the process to restore full legal title to Isaiah had begun. The fraud report went to the county sheriff's financial crimes unit. Isaiah sat across from a detective named Okafor, a calm woman with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and a yellow legal pad in front of her. She asked him to walk through the timeline. He did. He'd prepared a summary. Dates, document numbers, names, amounts. He handed it across the desk like he was presenting an engineering report. Detective Okafor looked it over without rushing. "The notary," she said, tapping the name on the document. "We know her." Isaiah said nothing. "She's already got a file with us." Okafor looked up. "This'll go in it." The fraud report named Kendra Freeman as the primary signatory on a forged document. It named the notary who had authenticated it. And it documented, through county records, the connection between that notary and Odessa Whitfield, the referral trail that led directly back to her. Isaiah didn't have to say Odessa orchestrated it. The paper trail said it for him. Kendra's broker called her the same week the forgery became public record. Isaiah didn't know the exact conversation. He didn't need to. Tobias told him what mattered. Kendra's real estate license had been suspended, pending investigation by the state licensing board. A licensed agent caught in a mortgage fraud case, even as a subject, not yet a convicted party, was a liability no brokerage would absorb quietly. Her broker had no choice. Kendra had built her professional identity around that license. Her business cards, her social media, the framed photo on her office wall of her first closed deal. All of it paused, suspended, held in legal limbo because she had signed her name to something that wasn't hers to sign. The family heard about it the way family always does, not through an announcement, through a phone call here, a conversation there, a screenshot forwarded between cousins who had been quietly skeptical of Odessa for years. The full picture came out in pieces. The forged refinance, the $180,000 in equity spent on Odessa and Perry's debts, and a business venture for Kendra's brother. The letters Isaiah never received. The story about him being absent and unreachable. That last part landed hardest. Some of them had believed it, had nodded along at cookouts and family dinners when Kendra mentioned how hard things had been, how Isaiah was always gone, how she'd been carrying the household alone. They felt foolish now. Not all of them came forward, but enough did. Relatives who had drifted away from Odessa over the years, who had their own memories of her managing, maneuvering, deciding what other people should want, called Isaiah directly, some to apologize, some just to say they believed him. Odessa had spent decades building her version of events. It collapsed faster than she had built it. The divorce filing was clean and direct. Isaiah's petition cited fraud and requested sole ownership of the house based on two grounds: his original financial investment as primary earner, and the fraudulent refinance that had attempted to strip that investment without his knowledge or consent. Tobias had the documentation airtight. Kendra did not contest the property claim. She couldn't. The evidence made any argument impossible, and her suspended license had already begun draining her financial position. She signed what she was required to sign and said nothing to Isaiah directly. No apology, no explanation, just signatures on forms delivered through attorneys. Odessa and Perry were out of the house within 10 days of the legal order. No conversation, no acknowledgement. Perry carried boxes to the truck, with his eyes down. Odessa walked past Isaiah's truck without looking at it, her posture stiff, her silence the kind that came not from dignity, but from having nothing left to say. Isaiah stood in the living room the evening they left. The sectional sofa was gone. The decorative cabinet was gone. The walls held faint rectangular shadows where pictures had hung, pictures that were never his. The floor had scuff marks near the door. Someone had rearranged the furniture enough times to leave grooves in the hardwood. He stood in the middle of the room and was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the window, looked out at the oak tree in the front yard, and went to find a notepad to write down everything that needed fixing. The porch smelled like fresh paint and morning air. Isaiah had done the repainting himself, taking 3 weekends in early spring to strip the old coat down to bare wood, sand it smooth, and apply 2 clean layers of deep charcoal gray. The color had been on a post-it note in his wallet for over a year, something he'd clipped from a home improvement magazine back when he and Kendra were still talking about updates they'd make someday. He'd done it without her. It looked exactly right. He sat in a wooden chair he'd bought at an estate sale 2 streets over and held his coffee with both hands, watching the sky go from dark blue to pale orange above the roofline across the street. The house behind him was quiet, in the way a house is quiet when it belongs entirely to you. 6 months had changed things room by room. The study was back. His drafting table sat under the window again, lamp angled just right, the surface clean and organized the way he kept it. The bookshelves were restocked with engineering manuals and a few paperback novels he'd been meaning to read for years. The walls held his framed licenses, his professional certifications, and 1 photograph, a shot of a bridge he'd worked on early in his career, taken at dusk with the lights just coming on over the water. The nursery that had occupied that room was gone, without a trace. He'd pulled up the temporary flooring they'd laid over his hardwood and found the original boards underneath, barely scratched. He'd polished them back to a shine in an afternoon. Every room had been touched, not redesigned, restored. There was a difference, and Isaiah understood it the way he understood most things, precisely, and without sentimentality. The promotion had come through in January. His firm had been after him to take a senior position for 2 years, one that required him to stay local and lead a regional infrastructure team rather than traveling contract to contract. He'd always turned it down before, thinking Kendra needed him flexible, available for the life she was building. He understood now that she had never factored him into that life at all. He accepted the role on a Tuesday morning, shook his director's hand, and drove home that evening to a house that was already beginning to look like itself again. The work was good, steady. He sat in on city planning meetings and reviewed load calculations and mentored a young engineer named Marcus, who reminded him of himself at 26, quiet, observant, always taking notes. It felt like the right use of what he knew. Tobias had called last week with the final confirmation. The divorce was done. The decree had been signed by the judge and entered into the county record, granting Isaiah sole ownership of the property. Kendra had retained nothing from the house. Her legal fees from the fraud case had grown steep enough that contesting the property split was simply beyond what she could afford. She was renting a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city, about 12 miles away. Tobias had mentioned it once, matter-of-factly, and Isaiah hadn't asked again. He didn't feel satisfaction about that part. He didn't feel much about it at all, which was its own kind of peace. Odessa and Perry had not spoken to him since the day they moved their boxes out. He had not sought them out. From what relatives told him, the ones who called, The ones who'd apologized for believing the story Kendra fed them, Odessa and Perry were largely alone now. The extended family had drawn its own conclusions once the full picture came out. Odessa had spent years managing those relationships the same way she'd managed everything else, by controlling what people knew and when they knew it. When that control slipped, there was nothing underneath it. No genuine goodwill, no credit earned over time, just the absence of the grip she'd had. Aunt Ruth came by on Saturdays. She'd pull up in her old Buick, walk up the porch steps at a pace that suggested she had no interest in being hurried, and sit in the chair beside his with a cup of whatever was already made. She didn't talk much about what had happened. That wasn't her way. But she looked around the house each visit with a quiet approval that said more than words would have. 2 weeks ago, she'd looked at the restored study and said, "You kept your head." "I had good examples," Isaiah told her. She'd made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a dismissal, and gone back to her coffee. The sun was fully clearing the roofline now. The light came flat and warm across the front yard, catching the grain of the oak tree's bark, laying long, soft shadows across the freshly cut grass. A neighbor's dog trotted past the end of the driveway. Somewhere down the block, a car started. Isaiah lifted his cup and drank. The house behind him held no shadows that weren't his own, no scuff marks he hadn't made, no furniture arranged by someone else's preference, no story rewritten without his knowledge. Just the structure. Solid, honest, exactly what it had always been, restored to the man who built it. He watched the light spread across his street and said nothing at all. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.